Sean Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today I have another exciting episode for you, and I'm on a field trip. I'm all the way down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Gotta say, half the world right now is freezing, got record cold temperatures these days. I just came from freezing temperatures, had to cover my plants and bring some inside. And here it is, nice tropical weather. I believe we're all meant to be living in tropical weather, not in northern climates. And I love my tropical fruits. In any case, why we are here today is to actually share with you guys a cool garden that's happening right here in downtown Fort Lauderdale. And it's Fort Lauderdale Vegetables. And the Fort Lauderdale Vegetables actually is on Andrews off 6th Street, and you can see like right next to me here is a big Publix supermarket, right? So think Publix supermarket, you can buy your produce in there, right? Why grow a garden, right? Actually, I had somebody say this to me the other day, why grow a garden when you could go to the supermarket? Well, obviously they've never grown and tasted homegrown food before. You know, the industrial system is just a system, and it's a system to make one thing, to make money, to make profit for the farmers, for the, you know, most likely the corporations that own the farms that are growing food, to be distributed on a mass market level, like a centralized system. So why I'm here today to show you guys how you can grow in South Florida or wherever you live, but also using a more decentralized method of growing food to get it out to the people. So, you know, no longer do we need super ginormous farms that are doing monocultures on acreage and acreage, but each and every one of us could have a small little farm to grow a wide variety of things to distribute to the local people. And I think, you know, local food makes much more sense, and especially when it's being grown sustainably with compost, adding things like rock dust, and even getting a higher quality food that's gonna taste better. And guess what? When it tastes better, people are gonna eat their fruits and vegetables. So anyways, let's head down the street, show you guys the farm here in Fort Lauderdale. All right, so there's the entrance to the Publix there. People are going in shopping. But little do people know that they could actually just go right next door and get Florida grown, Fort Lauderdale grown fresh produce. I mean, you never know by driving by. It just looks like a fence with a whole bunch of, you know, vines growing up it, which I think there's some kind of squash vines or something like that, kind of creeping out the front here. There's a nice squash flower. Man, that is, actually that's nice and beautiful. Check it out. Oh, here's a papaya tree. I love the tropics. More papaya trees. They should have like a papaya tree every 6 feet here. But as you guys can see, like beyond this fence, which is kind of architectural, is a whole nice garden. And check it out. This garden is not planted in the ground. South Florida is infamous for, you know, it's sandy soil and not good soil. And maybe you live somewhere where they don't have good soil either. Whether it's sand or actually clay is actually fairly good soil, you just need to work with it. Or you have a blacktop, because maybe this used to be a parking lot. But check it out what they've done. They've simply put down landscape fabric on the ground, and they have all these little container garden pots. And we'll look at those in a minute. And I mean, they just have literally containers stacked up next to each other, filled with some good, hopefully organic compost and other amendments, coconut coir, and they're growing amazing amounts of stuff. I mean, right next in the city, I mean, there's a busy street, cars driving by. And check it out, here they got some beautiful sunflowers growing. There's one popping its shiny flower out. And over on this side, we got one of my favorite, kales. Looks like a red kale over on this side. Oh, here's another beautiful sunflower. Really nice. Over on this side, what's left is some basil that's been cut back. And over here, check it out, you know, just in a little fabric pot, a huge papaya tree. And I mean, these guys are planted uber close. And check it out, if you think, oh, I need a lot of space to plant a tree, John, no. This is like maybe like a, I don't know, 25-gallon pot right there, fabric pot to grow these beautiful papaya trees. I love papayas. And getting down to the end of the row, as you guys can see, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. They have a whole bunch of different kinds of crops growing, including kales, and oh, here's some dinosaur kale. Looks like they got some Swiss chard, and oh, here's some peppers. Look at these beautiful pepper plants. I mean, they're almost like little miniature trees, and they got some herbs. I see some chives growing. They have to be growing some moringa here somewhere. Up, some pak choy. Love the pak choy and the bok choy. Definitely a good one to grow here in South Florida. And of course, we got some eggplants. Looks like they've seen some better days. Farm, literally city urban farm, goes on and on and on. Here's a whole row of just different herbs. Once again, more eggplants. I kind of like growing myself the little small eggplants like they are growing here. Here's some, looks like some radishes over on this row. More herbs. Carrots even growing. More peppers. And check this out. They even got little hoop houses. They can put up bird netting, shade cloth to protect their crops, or even to keep the bugs out. And how they've done this, it's just super simple, super easy. And as you guys can see, all they've done is literally downward attachment point right here. What they've done is, if I lift this guy up, you can see all they did is put a piece of rebar in there, stuck out the ground, and they put this in there, and they just have, you know, have it going over one of the rows, and you can see there they got a nice little hoop. Then you can put the fabric on top of it, and it looks like they're just using some very simple tie wraps to tie it together. Here they have a bunch of different tomatoes growing and more eggplants. Looks like they got a lot of arugula just coming up. All right, so what we're looking at now is the start of the garden coming up real soon. What they do here is they do what's called a rotational or successive plantings. What this means is that, you know, they plant one crop, it'll go to fruition or produce to its end, and then they'll plant something else. So every few weeks, they're always planting something new so that they'll have a continual supply of produce to harvest throughout the season. I also encourage you guys to do this at home. You know, you want to harvest things, and as the plant kind of gets older, have new plants to go in their place to replace it, so you can continue to eat out of your garden instead of the Publix or other local grocery stores. So next I want to share with you guys what makes this farm successful here growing in South Florida. Now, the first thing I want to mention is that they are on a short-term lease, like I think a little over a year or so, and so they may need to move at any time. So for that reason, they didn't want to plant a garden or a farm in the ground. Like many of you guys may be renting your home. You don't necessarily want to start making capital improvements to your place that you don't own. Another reason in South Florida they have, as I mentioned earlier, sandy soil, which is not the optimal soil to be growing in. So what they're doing instead is they're growing in containers. And literally you could think of this farm as a container farm. I mean, it's just using all these containers that are lined up, and they buy these hundreds at a time. And the trick is, if you buy them direct from the company, you know, you'll get them a lot less money as long as you're buying a sufficient quantity of them. And what these pots are, these are simply fabric pots, but these aren't any kind of fabric pot. These are actually called the jackpot. I hit the jackpot. And let's see here, it's betterroots.com is a website if you guys want to look that up. And what they're using here is a 15-gallon jackpot. And they've figured out that this 15-gallon size is about an 18-inch diameter. So that means you can plant, you know, depending on what you're planting, a bunch of different plants in one container. So for example, if you're growing like an eggplant, tomato, you might only want to plant one because they'll spread out so much. But if you're planting carrots, you could probably get at least a dozen carrot plants in here. Or things like herbs, you could probably plant a good, you know, 4 basil plants and, I don't know, like 12 little small lettuces and whatnot. So you could really maximize the use of the space. In addition, they're filling it with a good mixture, basically a good potting soil mixture that's really heavy on the compost. Compost is what makes it happen, and compost also happens like we're gonna see in a minute. In addition, they have an automatic watering system or irrigation system that's gonna come on at preset times, or they're gonna turn that on, and it's gonna water each container so that they don't have to go around with a hose and do it manually. Now, I always encourage you guys to get some kind of automatic irrigation system, so it makes your garden, you know, that you can do less work on it. Because if you got to water, that could take a garden this size, you know, a good half hour at least to water every plant. But with an irrigation system, it's all gonna be done for you, and it just takes a little bit of investment to buy all the stuff and set it up. And it really is easy to set up. I do have videos on setting up irrigation if you're interested. Anyways, I want to get back to these jackpots and why they're using them. So here in South Florida, it does tend to rain quite a bit. And the reason for these fabric pots is because the water will drain through them. Not only the bottoms like our standard pot would, but also water can flow out the sides. So this is very critical so that the roots don't get too wet inside the fabric pot. In addition, there's another feature these fabric pots have. It's called air pruning. So when the roots grow to the edge of the fabric pot, instead of wrapping around like, you know, getting a root bound like many of you guys have seen in plastic pots, the roots hit the side of this. It says, oh no, there's air, and then the root splits off, and then it actually keeps branching out and creates more root. The more root, the more fruit you got, or the more leaves you got too. In addition, because of all the aeration you're also getting more aeration to the roots and to the soil. And what this is gonna do is this is gonna encourage the beneficial microbes in the soil, which are an active part of the ecosystem in the little fabric pot, so that they can surely thrive. Another thing they're doing here with the fabric pots is instead of just standing these guys up tall and filling them up all the way, which would actually take more soil, they're actually also folding these guys down and folding it over, so you could fold it over like once or twice and actually make it go down really low. Now, if you're planting like a big tree or something large, you'd want to fill it up to the top. But on, you know, tomatoes and other vegetables, you know, probably if you just had at least 10 to 12 inches of soil, you're probably all right. I was also told that by folding it over this way, it actually prevents some of the slugs and snails getting in here. So that's actually something I'll have to try that's new to me. Next, let's take a look at a few more areas of this amazing downtown garden. So one of the things you guys should totally grow if you live here in South Florida are bananas. You know, most all bananas you buy at the grocery store are all imported, and they're one variety. They're called the Cavendish variety. Imagine if you went to the grocery store and bought apples and they're always red delicious apples. You know, growing your own bananas, there's over, I don't know, 50 varieties easy you could get. There's a company called going-bananas.com. You can actually order plants. They'll ship you plants to anywhere in the United States. And you can even grow bananas in containers, as they're doing here. They got a couple nice banana plants. Now, bananas are not trees, although people call them banana trees. They're herbaceous plants because they don't actually have any wood. And it looks like they're doing pretty good here. They're simply in 25-gallon blackjack pots. So yes, even if you don't have a lot of space, you know, like in the ground or own your own home, you could have some containers and grow a fabulous garden like you've seen, but also some smaller trees and herbaceous shrubs like bananas. All right, coming up the backside of this garden, and as you guys can see, here's another blackjack pot, fabric pot, growing something real cool. This is actually called the dragon fruit. I love eating dragon fruit. Hopefully this is a yellow variety dragon fruit, as they are the sweetest. The white one's actually not so sweet. I do like the red ones a bit more than the white ones or the pink ones. And also they're growing up the fence. I always encourage you guys to grow up your fence. You know, if you look at a fence, you can see, oh yeah, the fence, that keeps the people out, that keeps dogs out, that might be keeping the wind out, but you could also use it to your advantage as a little trellis. As you guys can see, what they're doing is they're growing little cucumber plants up the fence, and there's a nice cucumber just waiting to be harvested. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at how they're watering all this, and also their little compost tumblers that are homemade. So as you guys can see, they have some homemade compost tumblers, and what they're made out of is something real simple that many of you guys may be able to find on Craigslist for relatively inexpensive. It's these big 55-gallon plastic drums with like large lids that literally screw off. I like screwing off more than I like screwing on. And there we go, and as you guys can see, it's filled up with all the cuttings from the garden. And what they've simply done is they took this nice large plastic 55-gallon drum, which is actually a cool shape. This is kind of a square shape that I've never seen before. I like it more than the round shape that you often see. They've drilled a whole bunch of holes in it, making it literally like Swiss cheese. Probably like half-inch holes and just a bunch of them in there. And then they made a big hole on the side, put a piece of like electrical conduit, EMT conduit, maybe like, I don't know, 3/4 inch or 1 inch. And just some simple 4x4 posts with some 2x4 bracing on the bottom to secure it. And now, oops, they have a compost tumbler. Just make sure you put the top on all the way before you spin it. Next, let's go ahead and share how they water this container garden here in South Florida. Basically what they're using is they're using the IBC totes. Once again, these totes can be available on Craigslist, and depending on where you live, they may run $50 to $150. They each hold about 250 gallons of water, so with 4 of these, they literally have 1,000 gallons worth of water storage. Now, while they can collect water off local roofs and then reuse that water, they're actually just using a filtered city water here that they'll actually fill up in here. And then because the water in these IBC totes, you know, have a lot of pressure coming out the little spigot at the bottom, it goes into the white irrigation tubing that'll then feed the garden the water. So definitely really cool. Now the last IBC totes over on this side, they're actually using it to brew up some compost tea to enrich the garden with the beneficial microbes. And I always encourage you guys to ensure that you're getting beneficial microbes and the fungi and the fun girls in your garden, because they are a critical part of your garden to be successful, because it's literally the bacteria and the fungi and all the other food soil web creatures that are in the soil breaking it down and creating more fertilizer, free fertilizer for you to give the plants the nutrition they need to grow to be bountiful, so that you don't have to buy expensive fertilizer from the big box store. So I know what some of you guys are thinking earlier. John, how is a papaya or one of those trees or bananas gonna survive in a small 15-gallon pot? It's like the genie in the Aladdin's lamp, right? How did he fit in there? He was so big, right? But anyways, as you guys can see here, this papaya tree is technically in that same 15-gallon pot. And check out, I mean, I'm gonna let the video image speak for itself. This little papaya tree in just a 15-gallon pot is loaded with papaya. One of my favorite fruits are papayas. I love all tropical fruits, actually. And I think it's really sad that most of the papayas, you know, these days can be genetically modified. Actually, if they're from Hawaii, high probability it's probably GMO. So I encourage you guys to grow your own non-GMO varieties of papayas if you're lucky enough to live in a place like South Florida or some other tropical locale. Also, you know, papayas that you get right off your tree, always gonna taste better than the stuff you buy at the store. Unfortunately, to my knowledge, all papayas that you buy in the store, at the standard grocery store, are picked far too early, because they gotta pick them early so that they're hard, because if they pick them when they're too soft, they're gonna mush and go bad, or the farmer or the corporation that owns the farms is just gonna lose their profits. So they gotta pick them too early, and it's only at full maturity do all the full flavors and sugars develop. And let me tell you, I love those natural fruit sugars. So hope you guys enjoyed the tour of the little farm here at street level in South Florida. Next, I got another special treat for you. Not only does Fort Lauderdale Vegetables grow here, they have another location a few blocks away on the top of a skyscraper roof. So we're gonna go ahead and check that out and show you guys how to grow not only here in the city, but also on the roof. And I think this is something that every large roof should have, an edible food garden to feed local people. All right, so now we're at the second site of Fort Lauderdale Vegetables, and we're actually on top of a roof here. Check it out. There's a street down below us there. On top of the roof, it's a 110 tower here in Fort Lauderdale. And even up on this green building, right, they got food growing on the roof. Totally cool. And Fort Lauderdale Vegetables doing that. Let me go ahead and turn the camera around and show you guys. Check it out. So up on the roof here, and they're currently in the replanting process. They got a whole bunch of different vegetables growing. And once again, you know, they're using those same jackpot fabric pots you guys saw. And look at the amazing success they're having. They got radishes, they got collard greens, they got callaloo. They just harvested a bunch of onions, and they're currently replanting carrots actually that are growing quite fast and doing quite well, and some other things. So next, if we're lucky, maybe we'll get to even speak with the owner and have him share his insights on growing here in South Florida and local food. All right, so now I have the pleasure of introducing to you guys the farmer here, Michael. He's not only an urban farmer, but he's a food policy agent, because one of the things he's learned is that he literally has to educate people about eating fruits and vegetables and local foods, more importantly, and create a market for this stuff. Because, you know, as this system is set up in this day and age, you know, people think food comes from the grocery store and from the fast food joint, right? No, I want you guys to know that food can come from your front yard or even your backyard if you live here in Fort Lauderdale. So we're gonna simply ask Michael a few questions on how all this came to fruition. So Michael, how come you started the Fort Lauderdale vegetables here?
Well, I had this idea of being able to create a new career around growing food in a climate where we can do it all year round. And if we can eliminate the transportation and distribution and storage of the food, we can save a lot of money and people can earn a reasonable living doing it. I practiced architecture here in the city for 30 years and unfortunately ended up with a degenerative eye disease that caused me really to have to get out of that business. But I'm still able to see enough that I could actually run an operation like this. So that really was the basis of looking for a new career in a system that I could run year round, do sustainably, not just sustainably environmentally, but economically, because some businesses are not that economically sustainable, but food can be one of those.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's always got to eat, so, you know, you've always got a market, whereas if you're doing some other profession, if the economic crunch comes, maybe you're going to get laid off, but everybody always needs to eat, so I want you guys to think about that. So, Michael, what's the one top mission and message you want to get out to my viewers today?
Well, the mission really is a lot of what I just mentioned earlier, is being able to develop a sustainable system for growing food that can be repeated. So people like myself and others can actually have careers as urban farmers. It's important that it be economically sustainable as well as environmentally sustainable. So just creating food in a fun way may not be that economical. We have to look at the system that we're using to make sure we don't have waste, that it's efficient, that it's productive, that basically is relatively easy to do, not complicated. We don't end up with a lot of waste, a lot of packages and things. We really create almost all of our nutrition here on site by using compost tea. We collect our seeds when we can. So we really try to make it an internal system that reduces the inputs and the cost. And of course, if we can produce the food at reasonable expense, we can sell it more reasonably as well. And I think there's a good margin in there when we can save the overhead of owning a big supermarket and operating all the electric and cooling in that building by just selling the food direct from the farm. Part of the mission really is to make a repeatable system that somebody else can actually operate as well. So I'm not going to be the only farmer in Fort Lauderdale doing this. We'll ultimately have a network of small farms creating employment, more access to food, connection to nature. So that's generally the mission of what we're trying to do.
Wow, great. So, I mean, this sounds like a decentralized farming. I mean, farming as it's set up now, it's centralized, right? We got the big, massive agri-farm businesses, monocropping, one type of crop, and then they ship it off to millions of grocery stores across the U.S. But simply, if everybody had a small farm, like all you guys watching out there, maybe you've been looking for a new career. Maybe you're an architect that can't do architecture anymore. Maybe you're an auto mechanic and, I don't know, you hurt your arm, so you can't do that. Everybody needs to eat, and everybody, especially you guys, that you guys have been growing food now, you're home for hopefully years now, you have the experience to take this to the next level to start growing food for your community. It's a healthy, rewarding, and I can't think of anything better to do. So one of the things actually I want to talk to Michael about, because he had to actually take a smoke break earlier, is smoking in your garden. I mean, we know that smoking, there's a warning, you know, on every package, can cause cancer and all this kind of stuff. But Michael, what's the one reason why, if you're a gardener, you shouldn't be smoking?
Well, you shouldn't be smoking. I don't smoke a lot. I smoke 1 cigarette a day. But I have to be extremely careful, because if I get tobacco residue on my hands and I touch plants, I can transmit a disease to those plants, tobacco mosaic poisoning, and it's actually happened. We've had people come out here who are smokers that don't even know they're smokers, and they may have tobacco on their hands, they're volunteering, and all of a sudden we notice patterns in the leaves, and we look it up and we find out it's one of these poisonings. So regardless of smoking or not, when you're bringing in contamination to the garden, you got to be careful. So washing your hands, things that you may have touched with your hands, including your tools, is an important thing to consider. We keep a small container of white vinegar on the job, really for cleaning almost anything we work with, whether it be our coolers that we store food in, our tools, and I wash my hands with it as well to make sure that I'm not spreading disease. But yeah, smoking's not a good thing in general, and it can actually be very dangerous to a garden.
I definitely agree. Dangerous to your health and dangerous to your little babies growing in your garden. So the last thing I want to mention is, you know, Michael is here like virtually almost every day, and he's looking for people to teach how to do this stuff in the form of volunteers, because he also could always use some extra help. So if you're interested in actually working with Michael and learning how to do this, and maybe even weeding or harvesting or who knows what he'll have you do, you want to definitely contact him. If you're not up to growing your own food, which I think you should be, and you live in the South Florida area, you definitely want to call this man and get some of his crops. He grows some high quality stuff here. So Michael, if somebody wants to get a hold of you to buy some of your crops, maybe they're a chef and they want to supply their restaurant, or maybe they're just somebody that, you know, lives here in town and wants to learn how to garden and get real world experience from somebody that's doing it, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, there's a couple ways. They can go to our website, FortLauderdaleVegetables.com, all spelt out, F-O-R-T, and there the contact information is there. We have a contact sheet on the web. You can also, the phone number's there, our email address is there, and you can reach out to me any one of those ways. We also have a Facebook page, Fort Lauderdale Vegetables, and you can message us there and see a lot of our posts of what we're currently doing.
Awesome, Michael. Well, I want to thank you so much for inviting me out today and allowing me to film this video to share with literally the world on what you're doing. I think what you're doing is really important, and I think everybody in every city should have a little urban farm like Michael is. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Once again, my name is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. We'll see you next time, and remember, keep on growing.